During the height of the AIDS crisis, when fear and uncertainty spread across the world, many famous artists were forced to confront silent battles they rarely spoke about. They not only fought the illness itself, but also endured the weight of social stigma and the misunderstandings of their time. Behind the bright stage lights were deeply human stories of resilience, sacrifice, and unshakable courage. If you've ever known someone who went through similar hardships, leave a number 1. If not, leave a number 0. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to follow more powerful stories ahead. Rock Hudson was one of the most iconic leading men of the 1950s, widely regarded as a symbol of Hollywood masculinity. With his striking good looks and magnetic charm, he quickly rose to the pinnacle of his career and became a familiar face across American cinema. But behind the screen, Hudson lived with extreme caution. The rigid social attitudes toward sexuality at the time forced him to hide his true self. He existed in two worlds: the glamorous Rock Hudson, adored by the public, and the private Rock Hudson, quietly battling loneliness and overwhelming inner pressure. The marriage reflected the harsh social expectations of the time more than his own personal wishes. In 1984, Hudson was diagnosed with AIDS, a disease then surrounded by fear, stigma, and widespread misunderstanding. On July 25, 1985, the official announcement of his condition was made public. Shortly after, he passed away at the age of 59. Rock Hudson's death fundamentally changed how America viewed AIDS. It forced both the entertainment industry and society to open their minds to show more compassion and to recognize AIDS as a medical issue, not a moral judgment. His legacy lives not only in his iconic films, but also in the pivotal role he played in raising awareness and shifting public perception. Anthony Perkins, forever linked to his iconic role as Norman Bates in Psycho, became a defining figure of the psychological horror genre. Yet the very role that brought him to the peak of fame also mirrored some of the internal conflicts he carried in real life. To the public, he was the handsome, successful, highly sought-after Hollywood star. But behind the spotlight, Perkins lived quietly and cautiously, constantly shielding himself from a society that scrutinized everything. Born into an artistic family, he showed exceptional talent from a young age. He earned an Oscar nomination, made his mark in several romantic films, and even released songs that charted on the Billboard rankings. He was the ideal leading man prototype of Hollywood in the 1950s and 1960s. However, in an era still shaped by rigid social prejudices, Anthony Perkins was forced to hide his personal identity. He once had a romantic relationship with fellow actor Tab Hunter, but both men lived extremely discreetly, fearing that going public would jeopardize their careers. Like many artists of their time, they were expected to take part in carefully crafted image-maintaining social events, sometimes appearing with actresses as dates to avoid unwanted attention from the press. Under the pressure to conform to the expectations of the era, Perkins repeatedly tried to fit himself into the norms society demanded. He married photographer Barry Berenson in 1973, and together they had 2 children. That small family became his greatest source of strength in the later years of his life. By the late 1980s, Anthony Perkins discovered that he was HIV positive. At a time when public understanding of the disease was still limited, he chose to keep his condition private to protect his family and avoid a media frenzy. Despite his illness, he continued working, maintained an optimistic spirit, and always appeared with his characteristic poise and professionalism. Anthony Perkins passed away on September 12, 1992 at the age of 60 due to pneumonia related to AIDS. Freddie Mercury, born Farrokh Bulsara, lived through a challenging childhood and youth before becoming one of the greatest artists of the 20th century. Despite his desire to live authentically, he still had to face the heavy social expectations of his time. His relationship with Mary Austin, whom he always called the love of my life, was proof of an extraordinary bond, a lifelong soulmate connection that endured through every high and low of his journey. At the same time, Freddie also had same-sex relationships and went through periods of living freely, embracing the parts of himself he had long been unable to express openly. His uninhibited, free-spirited experiences became the emotional fuel behind his powerful music. In 1987, Freddie Mercury received an HIV-positive diagnosis. The news was a devastating shock, but he refused to let the illness define who he was. Instead, Freddie continued to work relentlessly, pouring all his passion, his pain, and his resilience into every song. The music he created in the final years of his life was more than art. It was a bold declaration from an artist who chose to face his fate with unwavering courage. On November 23, 1991, after years of keeping his condition private to protect his personal life, Freddie Mercury decided to announce publicly that he was battling AIDS. Just 24 hours after that statement, he passed away, leaving an unfillable void in the hearts of fans around the world. After his death, Mary Austin, his lifelong soulmate and closest companion, was left the majority of his estate, including Garden Lodge, his iconic London home. But his passing did not mark the end of his journey. Instead, it opened the door to a new legacy. Pedro Zamora was one of the early pioneers of American reality television, but his greatest legacy wasn't fame. It was the courage he showed by openly sharing his battle with HIV on national TV, diagnosed at 17, at a time when AIDS was still deeply misunderstood and surrounded by fear. Pedro chose to speak up rather than stay silent. He attended conferences, visited schools, engaged with communities, and offered a truthful human perspective on what it meant to live with HIV. When he joined the Real World San Francisco in 1994, he brought that same honesty and advocacy to millions of viewers. Pedro wasn't just another cast member on the show, he became a symbol of honesty, openness, and bravery. His relationship with his partner Sean Sasser, along with their widely televised commitment ceremony, marked a historic moment as one of the first openly gay couples to appear on national television. However, Pedro's health gradually worsened. The virus began to affect both his physical condition and cognitive abilities, making even daily activities increasingly difficult. Despite his declining health, Pedro's perseverance and positivity continued to radiate strength, inspiring millions. On November 11, 1994, just hours after the final episode of the show aired, Pedro Zamora passed away at the age of 22. His death brought profound sorrow, but it also significantly elevated public awareness and understanding of HIV/AIDS. Pedro left behind a legacy of compassion, courage, and a powerful fight against stigma carried forward through the very story of his life. Ed Koch, famous for his signature question, "How am I doing?" was one of New York's most prominent mayors. He led the city beginning in 1977, a time when New York was facing bankruptcy, rising crime, and a severe loss of public confidence. Thanks to his strong leadership and down-to-earth style, he quickly became a symbol of stability, helping guide the city back on track. Born in 1924 and having served as a soldier before entering politics, Ed Koch is remembered by the public as a bold, decisive leader with a larger-than-life personality. However, during the years when New York was grappling with the AIDS crisis in the 1980s, his public image entered a period of intense scrutiny. Many activists, including Larry Kramer, co-founder of ACT-UP, criticized the administration's slow response as the epidemic worsened. The criticism grew even louder amid widespread speculation about Koch's personal life. Through it all, Ed Koch firmly maintained, "My private life is my own business." It wasn't until after his death in 2013 that his longtime friend Charles Kaiser confirmed that Ed Koch was gay. This revelation led the public to reassess his legacy from multiple angles. On one hand, Koch had signed important legislation that advanced protections for the LGBTQ+ community. On the other hand, many felt he did not act quickly enough during the early years of the AIDS outbreak. On February 1, 2013, Ed Koch passed away at the age of 88. He is remembered as one of New York's great mayors, a historical figure layered with strength, controversy, and far more complexity than what was visible in the media. Roy Cohn was one of the most fiercely controversial figures in American political history. Born in 1927, he rose to power early and quickly became an influential force as counsel to Senator Joseph McCarthy during the early years of the Cold War. By the age of 23, Cohn had already taken part in several high-profile hearings, leaving a sharp imprint on the era of the Red Scare, a period defined by fear, tension, and national paranoia. During that same time, Roy Cohn also played a role in the Lavender Scare, a government-led campaign aimed at removing federal employees suspected of being part of the LGBTQ+ community from government positions. This cemented his reputation as a tough, hardline figure, one whose actions often caused real harm to many. Yet despite his public stance, Roy Cohn's personal life was constantly surrounded by speculation about his sexual orientation, something he repeatedly denied. His close relationships with certain associates such as David Schein drew media attention, but Cohn maintained that his private life was nobody's business. After leaving Washington, he went on to become a highly influential attorney in New York, representing major businessmen and prominent public figures and establishing himself as a powerful force in the city's legal and commercial circles. In 1984, Roy Cohn was diagnosed with HIV. In a society still steeped in stigma, he chose to keep his condition a secret, publicly claiming he had liver cancer to avoid scrutiny. Even as his health declined, he continued to project strength and try to maintain the resolute image he had built throughout his career. Roy Cohn died on August 2, 1988 at the age of 59. His legacy is a complex one, a highly influential legal career intertwined with a historical lesson about the contradictions within a person where the choices made in public life and private life can clash in deeply profound ways. Steve Rubell was once the heart and soul of Studio 54, the most legendary nightclub in New York during the 1970s. With his distinctive management style, Rubell created a guest list policy that became a true legend in the entertainment world. The doors of Studio 54 weren't just the entrance to a nightclub, they were the boundary between the ordinary world and a wild creative universe where artists, designers, actors, and the era's most iconic figures came together. However, that success didn't last long. In December 1978, the U.S. Internal Revenue Service launched an investigation into Studio 54 and uncovered financial irregularities. Steve Rubell and his partner were charged with tax evasion. In court, several of Rubell's past statements were cited as evidence against him, leading to a sentence of 3.5 years in prison. After serving his time, Steve Rubell tried to rebuild his life by opening the Morgan's Hotel, a project that helped give birth to the boutique hotel trend, which later became a major part of modern hospitality. This success proved that Rubell's creativity and vision extended far beyond Studio 54. However, in 1988, Steve Rubell was diagnosed with HIV at a time when society still held many misconceptions about the disease. He lived quietly during his final years and passed away on July 25, 1989. Medical records listed the cause of death as complications related to hepatitis and infection. His passing became one chapter in the larger story of the many lives affected by the HIV/AIDS crisis of the 80s. Though his life was short, he left a powerful cultural imprint, with Studio 54 still remembered as a symbol of creativity, artistry, and the explosive energy of pop culture. Joel Crothers was a familiar face on American television, best known for his roles in long-running series like Dark Shadows and Somerset. With his handsome looks and natural acting style, he became a beloved figure among millions of viewers throughout the 1960s and 70s. Yet behind the image of a rising TV star was a personal story Joel Crothers chose to keep private in order to protect his career. At that time, publicly acknowledging one's sexual orientation could severely damage an actor's standing in the eyes of the public. Although Crothers was honest with those closest to him, he still had to be cautious whenever he appeared in the public eye. His engagement to actress Val Gray was once portrayed as a romantic love story, but in reality, it was a strategic choice to avoid scrutiny and the intense social pressure of the time. In the early 1980s, as the HIV/AIDS crisis began to spread, Joel Crothers gradually stepped away from the spotlight. By 1985, he passed away at the age of 44 due to complications related to HIV/AIDS. At the time, stigma and widespread misunderstanding surrounding the disease meant that his death was not covered by the press as widely as that of many other performers. The silence surrounding Joel Crothers' passing reflects a painful chapter in history, a period when countless people faced illness in isolation and without full acknowledgement from society. Even so, his performances continue to leave a lasting imprint, serving as a reminder of the courage of those who stayed true to themselves during an era filled with immense challenges. Wade Dominguez may not have been a widely known name, but for anyone who watched Dangerous Minds, his presence was unforgettable. Born in 1966, Wade carried a striking, intense beauty and quickly drew attention for his dedicated work ethic and explosive on-screen energy. He appeared in films such as City of Industry and The Two Jakes, and was considered one of Hollywood's most promising young actors of his generation. As his career was gaining momentum, Wade Dominguez faced a devastating challenge. He learned he was HIV positive. In a society still burdened with misunderstanding and stigma, Wade chose to keep his condition private, avoiding unwanted attention while continuing to work with everything he had. Even in his final days, he held onto his artistic spirit. When actress Elizabeth Berkley Wade's close friend brought him a rough cut of his final film The Taxman to watch in the hospital, Wade grew emotional and said, "I did good. I really did good." It was a gentle yet profoundly proud affirmation from a young actor who had given his whole heart to his craft. On August 26, 1998, Wade Dominguez passed away at the age of 32. His death left behind deep sorrow, a bright talent gone too soon, never given the full chance to reach his potential. To Hollywood, Wade remains a reminder of the fragility of an artist's life and the silent battles that often unfold behind the spotlight. Willie Smith wasn't just a fashion designer, he was a visionary who redefined what style could mean for everyday people. Born in Philadelphia in 1948, Smith grew up surrounded by the vibrant energy of street art and American music culture.
These influences shaped his creative spirit and helped him become one of the most innovative designers of the 20th century. In 1976, he founded Willie Wear, a fashion line that uniquely blended the sophistication of high-end design with the accessibility and dynamism of street style. His philosophy was simple and powerful. Beautiful fashion should be for everyone. Willie Smith helped break the boundaries between high fashion and everyday wear, opening a new direction for American style. However, his life took a heartbreaking turn in the mid-1980s. After his partner passed away from AIDS-related complications, Willie Smith began experiencing health issues of his own. In 1987, he died at the age of 39. Due to the social stigma surrounding AIDS, at the time his company chose to keep the cause of his death private. If Willie Smith's story inspires you, leave a 1 in the comments. If you're not fully convinced, comment 0, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel.
Denholm Elliott was the kind of actor whose name some viewers might not recall as instantly, yet his face presence and unmistakable charm always left a lasting impression. Over the course of his career, he appeared in more than 125 films, often in supporting roles, but every time he stepped on screen, Elliott commanded attention through his subtle delivery and uniquely expressive style. Born in London in 1922, his early life was far from easy. During World War II, he served in the military and spent 3 years imprisoned as a prisoner of war, an experience that profoundly shaped him both as a man and as an artist. Those harsh wartime experiences forged his resilience and gave him a profound inner depth, a quality that later became his greatest strength as an actor. After the war, Denholm Elliott quickly became one of Britain's most beloved character actors. His remarkable versatility allowed him to breathe life into countless memorable roles: Marcus Brody, the endearingly bumbling museum curator in Indiana Jones, Coleman, the wise and loyal butler in Trading Places, and Mr. Emerson, the warm, empathetic father in A Room with a View. He never needed grand leading roles to be unforgettable. Denholm Elliott captivated audiences through subtlety, emotional depth, and a deeply human style of acting. He proved that a supporting actor could leave just as powerful a legacy as any star at the top of the marquee. Yet Elliott's life also contained quiet chapters he rarely spoke about. He was open with close friends about his identity and constantly worked to balance that truth with his private life and his career. In 1987, at the height of his success, Denholm Elliott was diagnosed with HIV. At the age of 65, instead of stepping back, he continued to work with passion, taking on major projects and maintaining a steady, determined spirit despite his illness. On October 6, 1992, Denholm Elliott passed away at his home at the age of 70 due to AIDS-related complications. His death shocked the British film industry and also helped the public better understand the illness he had faced with quiet strength and dignity. To honor his talent and contributions, BAFTA established the Denholm Elliott Award for Promising Young Actors, ensuring that his legacy continues to live on in the world of art. The story of Ondrej Nepela, one of the greatest figure skaters of the 20th century, didn't begin with ambition, but with a medical recommendation. In 1951, when he was just 7 years old, his mother took him to an ice rink to help strengthen his body and improve his asthma. No one could have imagined that such a simple moment would spark the journey of a future sports legend. Nepela's natural talent emerged almost instantly. By the age of 13, he was already representing Czechoslovakia at the 1964 Winter Olympics. Although he didn't win a medal at that young age, his fluid movement, precision, and artistic maturity far beyond his years quickly earned him the reputation of a true skating prodigy. Nepela reached the peak of his career at the Sapporo Olympics in 1972, where he won the coveted Olympic gold medal. Throughout his career, he also claimed 3 World Championship titles and 5 European Championship titles, becoming an enduring symbol of elegance, technique, and absolute discipline on the ice. On the rink, he shone with grace and refinement, but off the ice, Nepela was quiet, reserved, and intensely private. He rarely spoke about his private life, which only added to the air of mystery surrounding him both for fans and for those within the sports world. After retiring, Ondrej Nepela became a coach and continued to contribute quietly to the next generation of skaters. However, by the late 1980s, his health began to decline. In 1988, he was diagnosed with lymphoma, a cancer of the lymphatic system. This was the official, widely documented cause, and any outside speculation regarding its origins has never been verified and does not reflect the historical record. On February 2, 1989, Ondrej Nepela passed away in Mannheim, Germany at the age of 38. His death was a tremendous loss for the world of sports, especially the discipline of figure skating. Though his life was short, Nepela left behind a brilliant legacy, an Olympic gold medal, multiple championship titles, and the enduring image of an athlete who lived fully for his passion. He is proof that sometimes the quietest individuals leave the most lasting impact. Even after Ondrej Nepela left the ice forever, the sports world continued to feel the deep influence of a man who turned a simple childhood recommendation into a legendary career. Brad Davis once captivated Hollywood with his magnetic smile and intense, unforgettable gaze. But behind that radiant exterior was a life filled with painful struggles he kept only to himself. Born into a troubled family, Davis quietly fought his way through hardship before moving to New York to chase his dream of becoming an actor. In 1978, his breakthrough role as Billy Hayes in Midnight Express launched him to the peak of his career, earning him a Golden Globe and making him one of the most sought-after faces in the industry. He later continued to shine with his performance in Querelle, proving his remarkable ability to embody complex, emotionally layered characters. However, Brad Davis's off-screen life was filled with pressure. To cope with the stress of fame and his own inner conflicts, he had to battle mental health challenges while trying to maintain stability for his family. In 1985, Brad Davis learned he was HIV positive. At a time when stigma was still widespread, he chose to keep the diagnosis private, sharing it only with his family and closest friends. Over the next 6 years, Davis pushed himself to keep working, continuing to act and maintaining a professional spirit even as his health grew increasingly fragile. When he no longer had the strength to fight the illness, he made the final decision to end treatment on his own terms, a choice driven by his desire to preserve his dignity and autonomy. Brad Davis passed away on September 8, 1991, at the age of 41. After his death, his wife, artist Susan Bluestein, shared a more honest, intimate account of his life in her memoir, allowing audiences to understand the silent pain and extraordinary resilience he carried throughout his journey. Liberace born Wade Valentino, Liberace was one of the most unique performers of the 20th century. Growing up in a struggling immigrant family, he used his innate musical talent to build an entire entertainment empire, defined by his unmistakable personal flair. His shows were never just about music. They were a dazzling fusion of lights, elegance, and extravagant style, glittering capes, elaborately decorated pianos, and a charming performance manner that kept audiences captivated. He became the symbol of grand theatrical showmanship and one of the highest paid entertainers of his era. However, alongside his fame came the pressure to maintain a carefully crafted public image. For many years, Liberace chose to keep his private life completely out of the spotlight. When the press questioned him about his personal orientation, he protected his privacy in the only way society of that era allowed a time when openness was not always accepted. The 1980s marked a significant decline in his health as the AIDS crisis spread across the world. Liberace kept his condition secret, continuing to perform and holding on to his artistic spirit until the final months of his life. On February 4, 1987, he passed away at his home after a long battle with illness. Shortly afterward, the official medical report confirmed that he had died from pneumonia-related complications associated with AIDS. Liberace's passing reminded the world that even the most dazzling stars often carry private burdens they rarely reveal. Despite the hardships he faced, Liberace left behind a brilliant legacy, a one-of-a-kind performance style, a profound influence on modern showmanship, and a lasting lesson in resilience in the face of societal pressures. Howard Ashman was the creative genius behind timeless songs like Under the Sea, Part of Your World, and the deeply emotional melodies of Beauty and the Beast. Although he wasn't a public-facing celebrity, he was one of the most essential yet quiet architects of the Disney Renaissance. Born in 1950, Ashman displayed his theatrical brilliance, eventually partnering with composer Alan Menken. Together they created the musical Little Shop of Horrors, a breakthrough success that marked the beginning of a legendary artistic partnership and paved the way for their future triumphs. In 1986, Disney invited Howard Ashman to write the songs for The Little Mermaid. With his gift for bringing emotion, soul, and Broadway rhythm into animation, he created the iconic tracks that pulled Disney back to the top. But at the height of his brilliance, Ashman received the devastating news that he was HIV positive. In a time when society was still full of stigma, he chose to keep his condition private and continued working quietly. Even as the illness caused him intense pain, Ashman kept creating until the very end. Alan Menken once brought an entire piano into his hospital room so they could keep composing together, a testament to their rare friendship, loyalty, and artistic devotion.
One of the last songs they wrote together was Mob's song in Beauty and the Beast, a piece that captures the fear and prejudice of a raging crowd. The song carries a timeless spirit, a reflection of the emotions that people living with HIV or AIDS had to endure during that era. On March 14, 1991, Howard Ashman passed away, but his legacy lives on. At the end of Beauty and the Beast, Disney honored him with a deeply moving tribute to our friend Howard, who gave a mermaid her voice and a beast his soul. Ashman remains a powerful reminder of creative strength in the face of adversity, an artist who worked quietly yet left an indelible mark on the history of cinema. Rudolf Nureyev was one of the greatest ballet dancers of the 20th century, celebrated not only for his extraordinary talent but also for a life that felt like it belonged on the big screen. Born in 1938 in the Soviet Union, he showed remarkable ability from a young age and quickly became a rising star of the Kirov Theatre. On June 17, 1961, at Le Bourget Airport in Paris, Nureyev faced a historic turning point. Surrounded by Soviet security officers attempting to force him back to Moscow, he made a bold and irreversible choice. He sought asylum and stepped into the Western world. This decision didn't just change his life, it reshaped the history of international ballet.
In the West, Rudolf Nureyev rose to stardom with astonishing speed. He partnered with the legendary ballerina Margot Fonteyn, forming one of the most iconic duos in ballet history. Performances such as Romeo and Juliet and Swan Lake elevated him to new heights and helped establish male ballet as a central art form rather than a secondary role meant only to support the ballerina. On stage, he was powerful, precise, and emotionally intense. Off-stage, Nureyev lived like a true free-spirited artist, passionate, turbulent, and constantly chasing creativity. By the late 1980s, his health began to decline, and rumors started to spread. In 1993, Rudolf Nureyev passed away at the age of 54 due to complications from AIDS. The Paris Opera House hung a massive black drape in his honor, a solemn farewell to the man who changed the face of ballet. For many, his death was not just an ending, but his final leap, a powerful affirmation of the freedom he had fought for and embraced throughout his life. Paul Shenar may not be a name everyone recognizes, but to theatre lovers, he is nothing short of legendary. Coming from the stage, Shenar quickly caught Hollywood's attention with his magnetic presence, powerful acting, and deep, commanding voice. In 1983, he made a lasting impression as Alejandro Sosa in Scarface. His calm yet intimidating performance proved just how effortlessly he could disappear into a role unforgettable, even with limited screen time. In his personal life, Paul Shenar remained extremely private. During the 1970s and 80s, Hollywood was far less open about the personal stories of its artists, and he chose to keep his life away from the spotlight. Shenar was known for his professionalism and discipline, always keeping his work and private life completely separate. By the late 1980s, his health began to decline. Paul Shenar was diagnosed with HIV, a reality he chose to keep private in an era still filled with stigma. Even as his body weakened, he continued giving everything he had to the stage and the screen. On October 11, 1991, Paul Shenar passed away at the age of 53. His death was a significant loss to the arts and a poignant reminder of the silent battles many artists of that time were forced to fight alone. Keith Haring was more than an artist, he was a true cultural icon. Born in 1958 in Pennsylvania, Haring showed artistic talent from an early age. After moving to New York, he began creating his signature figures in subway stations, bringing art to the public in a bold, accessible way that had never been seen before. His vibrant, high-energy style helped turn street art into a powerful voice for a new generation. But Haring didn't just make art, he used it to speak the truth about society, fighting racism, advocating for gender equality, and especially raising awareness about HIV/AIDS. In 1987, Keith Haring was diagnosed with HIV. Instead of retreating, he turned his pain into creative power. His late-period works used bold, intense reds, both a warning and a plea for understanding. He founded the Keith Haring Foundation to support children and people living with HIV/AIDS, a project with lasting humanitarian impact. On February 16, 1990, Keith Haring passed away at the age of 31. Though his life was short, his legacy is eternal. His work is displayed in major museums around the world, and his voice continues to inspire generations long after he's gone. Steven Stucker was the kind of performer who could make audiences laugh the moment he walked on screen. Born in 1947 in Iowa, he quickly became known for his wildly creative improvisational comedy. His role in the Airplane films became an iconic example of absurd humor securing his place in American cinema. But behind the laughter was a life marked by real struggle. In 1984, Steven Stucker received an HIV diagnosis. Even while battling the illness, he continued working, contributing to his craft, and staying as optimistic as he could in the face of immense challenges. In the final years of his life, his health declined, but his creativity and natural humor never left him. Steven Stucker passed away on April 9, 1986, at the age of 38. He was one of the first actors in Hollywood to publicly disclose his diagnosis, a courageous act that helped raise awareness about HIV/AIDS during a time of intense stigma. Paul Shenar, Keith Haring, and Steven Stucker came from three very different worlds, film, street art, and comedy, but they shared one powerful truth. Despite illness and prejudice, they poured everything they had into their art. What do you think about these quiet individuals who left such an enormous legacy? They remind us that behind every spotlight, there are private battles the world rarely sees. In your own life, has anyone ever inspired you with their strength in overcoming hardship? If yes, comment the number 1. If not, comment 0 and share your thoughts with us. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a sub to support the channel and help us continue bringing meaningful stories your way. Thank you for watching.